Shalom, everybody, and thank you for joining us for a very special broadcast. In the recent trip to Florida, I was invited to do a podcast by the title of Man of True Worth. It was unlike anything that I've ever done. An intimate, one-on-one broadcast where the interviewer want to ask me any question about the faith, about the conflict, about the new book. And I promised him that I will be candid. Now, you should know that we have placed a small clip of that in the Christian channels. And we were stunned to see so many Christians just speak anti-Semitic slurs, anti-Israel and anti-Jewish, and ultimately anti-God and anti-Messiah. So for us, here at Ahavat Ami International, we are not going to back down, and we are going to speak the truth so that the world will know. Thank you for joining me this very special evening for this very important interview. I'm asking you to share it, to like it, and most importantly, listen to what I share with the interviewer, and I pray that many, many Christians will hear this message while there is time. Thank you again, and your share and likes allowing this message to expand. And may those who have ears will be able to hear. Shalom, everybody.
The Jewish people need healing. We need healing right now. We are traumatized by Christians. We are traumatized right now. You know, I read a report just this morning that 50% of the Jewish people lost non-Jewish friends since October 7th. Those people who profess and proclaim faith in Christ.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Welcome to the Men of True Worth podcast. Right here, I have a man of true worth, Rabbi Dr. Shapira.
Shalom, shalom. Great to be here with you.
Shalom, shalom, Rabbi. All right. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. We're going to dive right in. We're going to let the people get to know you a little bit, first of all.
Sure.
And so I want to hear a little bit about your story. Where'd you come from? What's the background?
Wow.
Yeah.
How much time do we have? Well, first of all, thanks for having me here, and for your viewers and listeners. It's just terrific to be able to share just a little bit about it. So, as you can hear from my thick accent, I wasn't born in Florida. I just got here as quick as I could. Not really. I was born in Israel. As you know, Israel became a nation in 1948. So in a way, I am a son of immigrants, because prior to 1948, most people, got there with the establishment of the modern state of Israel. Although there were Jewish people in the land all throughout, my family, remember what was going on in the 1940s? We had the Holocaust taking place, and I am a product of both the Holocaust and what took place from my mother's side, who was born and raised in Lithuania, in Vilna, the only survivor, truly the only survivor from the line from the Holocaust, suffered just terrible, terrible things and so forth, to the other side of my family that actually came from the Middle East, from Iraq, where was one of the largest Jewish communities worldwide at this time. My family was a very affluent family in Iraq, in Baghdad, and somehow those two clashes between Europe and the Middle East come to this giant melting pot called Israel. So that's kind of a little bit about how we even came about. My mother was able to escape after the Holocaust. Very long journey through Poland, from Poland to Italy, from Italy to the land of Israel, where my father came as a boy. He was born in Iraq. So, in one side of the family, they speak Russian and Yiddish, and then the other side, they speak Arabic and Aramaic. And they come together. And that's kind of how the interesting thing about the state of Israel also, that is a melting pot of different cultures, but it's also unified us as Jews. So I was born right after the Yom Kippur War. 1973 was a terrible, terrible war. My father is a tank commander. He served... and a tank hit, a direct missile hit his tank. He lost his hearing, almost 100%. And I was born right into that very strong religious family, Zionist family. My grandfather was, because he was a very educated man, he became the assistant mayor, became very involved in politics, and was a personal friend of David Ben-Gurion, the very first prime minister of Israel. Established the very first settlement in the Negev, south of where the Gaza Strip right now. So we were raised up with this, and only much, much later. So I didn't know even anybody was not Jewish. Everybody was Jewish, everybody's Israeli, and only much, much later in my life, I was even exposed to life outside of Israel. So that's a little bit of just of my background. I have brother and sister that also faithfully served. My sister, just a small story about my sister also. She became an officer in the intelligence because of her knowledge of Arabic. So it's truly amazing, just kind of a little bit to illustrate about the family. She, as she was about to draft to the IDF, she was diagnosed with cancer. And she didn't give up. She went to the IDF. She became an intelligence officer, and that's kind of the way we were raised up, with love to Israel, love to the Jewish people, and a strong sense of belonging, because that's the only thing we know. We were all tzabarim, which means native born and raised in Israel. So that's just a little bit about where we came from. It's interesting because we are resident Israelis, but our parents came from completely different world. If you know the story of the Bible of Abraham, our father who went through Turkey all the way around, that was the journey of my father. They came by foot. They left Iraq, went through the mountain of Persia by foot. My uncle fell into the ice and was drowning. They had to go save him. They used to take their shoes and put diamonds inside the shoes to smuggle whatever they could, just to walk. And the exact journey, if you know how Abraham went around, that's exactly the journey of hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Isn't that amazing? Which is incredible. Not only it's incredible, if you hear this word in the Bible, walk, and you count from the beginning of creation, you count, he heard those words, walk, exactly 1948 years from the creation of the world. Well, guess what? Israel was established as a nation in 1948 in the Gregorian calendar. Isn't that incredible? So we took the same journey as Abraham, our father, and that is the environment that I was raised in. I was growing up in an area called Splendor of Sharon, which is an area in Israel that is very famous for its agriculture. Oranges and strawberries. Usually I made it to school just smelling, reeking from oranges, just picking the oranges up, eating them on the way to school. And it's a wonderful community that's made out of a lot of Jews from Iran, from Persia, Iran, Yemen, Iraqi Jews, Kurdistani Jews. So that's called the Sephardic Jews. They're all descendants from Spain. Each and every one of them was descendant from Spain. So if you go back in generation, our family came from Spain. And we also know what happened in Spain. The Inquisition took place. So Jews kind of dispersed. So that's just a little bit about the story.
Oh, this is that's an incredible story. It's really cool that you've got a grasp on the whole background and everything that happened. Now, before we go too much further, for those that are tuning in early to this video, I do want to mention your new book, The New Hamas. So this book, The New Hamas, you just released
Yes.
it. So first of all, they can get this on Amazon.
Yes.
If they want the hard copy, where do they go?
The
Do they go to your
hard
website?
copy is on our website.
All right.
People can see it on the screen, avatami.org, which will be available for everybody to order. We translated this book now in record speed to English, Spanish, French, Italian, German, Korean, Dutch. It's available in countless languages. It's all available on paperback and also available on the Amazon on Kindle, on the digital format, so they can go to our organization, ahavatami.org, and get it.
Thank you. And so I'll get the links up there. But as far as this, so we'll talk about that book in a little bit. But
Sure.
I do want to know, so we've got where you came from and all of this. What about your faith journey?
Yeah.
Were you raised a Jew, or were you more of like not practicing
No,
Jew?
very
Or was-
practicing.
Okay, so you were raised
extremely practicing. On the opposite, you have to understand. I'll give an example. Here in America, you get different flavor. You have Reformed Jews, conservative Jews, secular Jews, whatever. But when we were growing up, coming from, especially my family from Iraq, my great-grandfather was one of they have those councils of rabbis. And my great-grandfather, the original name was Mordecai. He's one of the 12 chief rabbis of Iraq. So this is one of the highest rabbis of Iraq. My family, to show you how serious the Jewishness is, did not want to compromise the Jewishness, God forbid. They intermarry. My grandfather and my grandmother are distant cousins. By arranged marriage, he was 27, she was 13. And they got married just to preserve the Jewishness. So you can understand how serious is keeping our faith as Jews. And that's the way we were brought up. The synagogue in our hometown, my grandfather is responsible for much of the creation of the synagogue even. So he was a pillar in the community, in the Jewish community. And we were raised with this, with the love to the land, for the love to the people, and love for Judaism. Okay, so I would say, for me, being Jewish is not even something I thought about. It's just something that you accept and you live according to it. And there's no even question here. Like I told you, I didn't even know what is Christianity. I just know it's something really, really bad and something I need to stay away from. But that was it. My entire world, my entire paradigm is Jewish. And even to this day, that has never changed and will never change, no matter what. I'm not just proud of being Jewish, but I love Judaism, and I love everything about this.
That's interesting. And then I don't know a whole lot of your story, just what I've heard from Pastor Matt, but now you came to the realization of Jesus Christ being the Messiah through your own readings, is that right?
Yes. There have been a few stops along the way. But I can tell you, even for this, and everybody should understand it, it's not like one day I wake up and I say, hey, Jesus is Messiah. It's been painful. And many times across this journey, I said, why me? Because when a Jew accepts Jesus, or his name in Hebrew, Yeshua, there's a cost. There's a certain cost that involved with this, and it's a very painful cost that people cannot even, honestly, they cannot even comprehend what is the cost for that. It was terrible cost. But the one thing I can tell you this, even once I realized that, I knew that God does not make me a Christian. I knew that He just wants me to practice Judaism in a fuller way, and even in a way that I could not even understand before. Because, look, I still do the same thing that I've done before. I still keep kosher. I still daven. I still pray the same prayers. I still lay tefillin. I still do those things. But I do them down from a different lens, from a different perspective. And it's something very, very important to everybody to understand that when a Jew, at least the way it is in the way I read it and understand the scripture, when a Jew comes to faith in Yeshua, he's not becoming a Christian. The Jew have nothing to convert to. A Jew remain a Jew, okay? But the Jew now have a responsibility to take the full calling, a full calling against for the Torah, carrying the covenants of God, and also a full responsibility to the Gentiles. And that's the one thing that I think was missing in my life. I had zero connection with Gentiles until my 20s. Zero connection. My entire world, my entire universe is Jewish. And I suppose this is one of the great shocking thing for me, looking at the outside of my life. It's like I didn't even want to be next to Gentiles. And now I had a chance to be in 66 countries and really teaching Gentiles. So, God have a sense of humor in the way he works. Because I said, I don't want to do anything with the Gentiles, and now he's sending me to every nation to testify to the Gentiles about this Jewish rabbi, this Jewish Messiah named Yeshua. So it's a journey, and I will say a very painful journey, because I had to endure a lot, and enduring a lot. But this adversity, I believe, made me a better human being and a better Jew, to be honest.
This is interesting. So I can hear you saying like that, you explaining you endured a lot. That makes sense. I understand what you're saying. And you're saying basically you kind of, when you did accept Yeshua, you received a lot of backlash from the Jewish community.
Yes,
I understand. So
it's not just about it's not just if I may say one more thing. It's not just receiving backlash. You have to understand, it's being chastised and being cut from the community is something very painful. I'm not just talking here. I'm talking even in Israel. You're talking about families now. Yeah. You're talking about cousins and uncles and aunts and people that are your flesh and own blood. And you cannot kind of understand a little bit of the pain of Yeshua also from that regard. But I will say this, at the same time, look, it's not something that I say, I'm accepting, and that's it. It took me 15 years to really come out of the closet, so to speaking. So for 15 years, all what I do is study Judaism intensively. I mean, I already knew Judaism to a large degree, but really seeking to understand why Jews cannot accept him as Messiah. And in these 15 years, I understood. I really understood, and I was able to identify with Jews. Why cannot accept him as Mashiach? Hey, there's wars, there's famines, we're still being persecuted. All those wonderful promises of Isaiah and the prophets, we can't say they've been fulfilled, and it's become very real to me. But in 2013, it was a defining moment. I said, okay, a step on the research is complete, and I'm going to release a book called The Return of the Kosher Pig. And that was my finding that I sat on since the year 1999. Since 1999. So I'm sitting on this, and God says, be courageous and release it to the public in attempt to reconcile with this. And that was a book of reconciliation, a plea mostly for the Jewish people. The book became a bestseller, but something very interesting happened here, and then I understood the problem. Jewish people were like upset. Oh, how dare you use rabbinic literature, meaning Jewish literature, to prove that he can be the Messiah? While Christians, on the other side, they also got very, very angry. So, hey, you claim to be a believer, but you quote all this rabbinical stuff. Mm-hmm. So I found myself in between two worlds. The Christians are angry and the Jews are upset. But that's, I think, where I understood in this period. The book became like very well known worldwide. But I think that's really when I understood the dilemma. Look, 2,000 years ago, if you're a Jew and you say, son, you can come and say, I believe in Yeshua, nobody questioned your Jewishness. There was no question, can you be a Jew and believe in Yeshua 2,000 years? They're all Jews. They're all Jews. Nobody questioned it. But here we are 2,000 years later. And we ask the question, can a Jew believe in Yeshua? In essence, if you're a Jew, if you say, I'm a Jew, and you say, I believe in Yeshua, say, no, you're not a Jew, you're Christians. And that's when I understood the problem. That in 2,000 years, we separate. When I say me, I'm talking about the church, really separate themselves so much from the Jewishness of Paul and Peter. And, when I read them as a Jew for the first time, I'm like, hey, those are good Jews. There's no even a question in my mind whether or not they were good Jews or bad Jews. Those are great Jews. And nobody questioned their Jewishness. But it's make me ask the question, how come now, 2,000 years later, we look at them in such lens, with such a glass, that we think of them as Christians? Like Paul is a villain and Peter is a marginal Jew and Jesus is not really a rabbi. And when I look at that, again, at the Bible itself, at the scripture itself, and I read the words of Yeshua without lens, without bias, here's the conclusion. It's all Jewish. The first church was Jewish. They were Jewish, they're practicing Judaism that did not compromise because of their faith in Yeshua. So I suppose that's become my life mission, to reconcile those things, to turn back the wheel. And it's not so easy. I realized something very quickly, that I cannot do it without helping the Gentiles to understand the roots of their own faith. And that's become the mission and that's probably going to be the mission until my last day on the face of the earth, to bring this reconciliation.
So it's interesting. You mentioned you're not Christian. So what does that mean to you? Like Christian, or
Yes.
to call yourself Christian,
Yeah.
or somebody to call himself Christian.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I really appreciate this question. I'll tell you this story. This is a real story. The very first time that people knew that this Jewish guy that is came from a religious background believe in Yeshua. Okay? They invited me to church. And I went to a church service. It was local in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And everybody jumped on me in the church. And the very first question they asked me is, how long you been a Christian? And I could not understand their question. I said, what do you mean? I'm not a Christian, I'm Jewish. And I'll tell you where it's coming from. It's coming from the word of Paul. Paul was a Pharisee. He called himself a Pharisee, first from the tribe of Benjamin. And after he had this experience with Jesus in the road to Damascus, he speaks and he says, I am a Pharisee. He didn't say I was a Pharisee. He said, I am still a Pharisee. And this is the way I feel. God did not brought me to the faith to become a Christian, because I was circumcised on the 8th day. I am under the Torah, whether I like it or not, because I was circumcised on the 8th day. And I lived according to the tradition of Israel. But what he did for me, and I understand, is he changed something fundamental. I am not justified by the work of the Torah. I'm not justified by those. I do those things because I want to please my Heavenly Father who is in heaven. So there is a fundamental change in me, in the way I approach the Torah. Okay? But I still believe that as a Jew, I am to live my life according to the Torah. And this is the way I look. So when I say I'm not a Christian, I mean it from that perspective. We are think about Paul. He speaks in Romans chapter 9. He said the covenant and the promises and the work is given to the Jewish people. Those covenants are eternal. And therefore I must adhere to this covenant, and I live my life according to this covenant as a Jew who love Yeshua. Just like this, it says in the book of Acts, in Acts 21, how many tens of thousands Jews believed, and they're all zealots to the law. Let me tell you, I am more zealot right now to the Torah than I've been before Yeshua. Why? Because Yeshua is the greatest rabbi, and he was zealous to the law. And if he is my rabbi and he's been zealous to the law, I will be the same way, but do it from another place, from a deeper place within my heart.
All right. So this is incredible, because I kind of wanted to say, would you feel like it's sort of semantics? It's just a matter of the words that we're using when we're saying, like, are you Christian? And the reason I'm asking is because when they're saying, like, they're asking, when did you become a Christian? When did you become a Christian? This feels like, well, how do you define that? Because if you define it as you're following Jesus, if you're following Yeshua, if you define it that way, then would you call yourself Christian? Or is it just because we've hijacked the word?
Well, that's a great question. So I really actually appreciate this question. So you have to understand something. That's the difference. I do follow him, and he's my chief rabbi. But when I look at the Jesus, for example, in Matthew 23, he tell the Jews, listen to your judges, listen to them, listen to them, but do what they tell you, but don't do as their work, meaning that, yes, listen to their instruction, but come from another place from within your heart. I see something very important. Jesus, or in Hebrew, Yeshua, is not operating in a vacuum. You see, if he would go against Moses' instruction, he could not possibly be the Messiah. He could not be possibly the Messiah. Moses instructed us to listen to our judges, listen to our rabbis, listen to our teachers. So we have many teachers, we have many rabbis. I listen to them too. But Jesus is my chief rabbi, if it makes sense to you. He's operating within a system. And this system have a name. It's called Judaism. So I cannot say, hey, I follow Jesus, but I reject Judaism. It doesn't work like this, because he is part of this system. And we see it in so many places, even in the New Testament, that the followers of Jesus, for example, just one example, in the book of Acts chapter 1, this is the disciples. It's telling us they walk, the Sabbath day walk. Well, why do we care? Why is it Sabbath day walk? Why did the disciple care? Because they understood that there's a system that is called Judaism that define what a Sabbath day walk is. That. So think about this. It's a package deal. Jesus and Israel and Judaism is actually one entity. And I think that is you asked me about the semantic, that's I think the core fundamental difference between me and most Christians. Most Christians say, I follow Jesus, but I don't care about what Judaism says. Where I would come and say, no, if you want to understand what Jesus would have taught and what would explain, you really need to look at that in context. And the context have a name, the context is Judaism. So it's marrying the system to Jesus himself, if it makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. Now, you mentioned that you've ended up going on teaching and reaching out more to Gentiles. So reaching out. So we would say mostly your audience has ended up being Christians in the Western world. Would that be right?
It started very differently. It started to be 99.999% Jews. But I made a fundamental change about 10, 12 years ago, and I'm going to tell you why. I realized something about the Jewish people. I look at this really, truly objectively, through my own family. How can we talk to Jews at this moment about Jesus? How can we, as Christians, Messianic Jews, whatever you want to use here, how can we even talk about Jesus to Jewish people when we ourselves do not really understand or represent him correctly. It's like I'm going to go and I say to somebody, hey, let me sell you an ice cream, but rather to have 100% dairy, I'm going to give you some cheap substitution. I do believe, and this is something that is difficult, but I hope Christians will think about this. The Jesus that we give to the world in Sunday morning typical church, and again, I'm not here talking about the specific or individual I'm talking mainstream Christianity.
In general, not
is completely different than the Jesus that walked here 2,000 years ago on the face of the earth. This is the truth. The reality, if Jesus come down right now here, he would not find himself very comfortable on a Sunday service church. He would be much more comfortable going to the Shabbat morning service among our Jewish people. Let me give you a few examples. When did Jesus went to Sunday services? No, he went to Shabbat morning services. He didn't eat pork chops. He didn't paint Easter eggs. He celebrated Passover. He didn't even put a Christmas tree. He celebrated Hanukkah. All of these things are found in the New Testament scriptures. And we see that the very early church, the one that led by Jacob, James, was Jewish. So I do find myself very difficult to go and tell Jews about a Jesus that does not walk with Moses. You see, Jesus and Moses have to walk hand in hand. And you see that in the book of Revelation, for example, it says, then we will sing the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb. You see, Jesus, he prophesies more than anything else, or using this baseline for his teaching, Moses more than anybody else. So what does it mean today to typical Christian? Does it mean that you have to become Jewish? Well, to a degree, yes. What I mean by that is, because a Gentile is not under the Mosaic law, but he has to have appreciation. Appreciation, at the very least, appreciation to the Jewish ancestry that birthed the Messiah to the world. And not to be against it, not anti this. This is your heritage. If you believe in Jesus, then guess what? The heritage of Israel should become the heritage of the nations. So that's where I feel that we have to right now start this rectification. First, let's have an honest talk with Christians about the real Jesus. And that's the difference. He cannot be just a Lord and Savior. You also have to be a rabbi. He has to be a rabbi as well. Meaning that we walk and live our life outwardly and inwardly in the same way that he did. So where does it start for Christians is, first of all, appreciate their Jewish heritage. This is a starting point. I don't say that Gentiles should become Torah observant Jews. They're not. The scripture are very, very clear about this. But I think this is where the heart of the Jew should come, to teach the Gentiles, to love the Gentiles, so that they can really appreciate what a rich heritage they have in the Torah and marry the two. When the Jewish people will see this, then they will make the immediate connection between Jesus to Israel. And that's where our challenge is right now. A lot of resistance. But I got to tell you, for the last 10, 15 years, what I've seen is such an opening and such an awakening, which give me a lot of hope for the days ahead.
So you believe that it's important for Gentiles to learn about Judaism.
Yes.
Do Jews need to learn about Jesus?
100%. And the only one who will be able to teach them is the Gentiles. That is the truth. You see, I cannot teach Jews about Jesus because they look at me and they say, you're a Christian. But the church look at me and say, you're an Orthodox Jew. So you see, that's kind of the difficulty of being where I'm at today. So I think the key, and this is something that I want your audience to really listen. We are Jewish believers in Yeshua. We consider ourselves Jews. We live a Jewish lifestyle. But the rest of the Jewish world do not see us as such way. They are angry at us. They're upset like we sold our birthright in such a way. We sold our birthright. The only one who can rectify Jesus, remember Jacob? Jacob's name is Israel. The garment dipped with blood was given to Jacob in the last 2,000 years by Christians. Pogroms, Inquisition, Holocaust. The only one who can rectify the name of Yeshua among the Jewish people is the Gentiles. So we, as Jewish followers of Yeshua, we need to be the greatest allies of the church and find a remnant who understand that and cheer you on, teach you, love you, encourage you, not force you, not condemn you, not to do any of those things because you hold the key. That's why Paul says that the fullness of the Gentiles is the one that's going to lead to Israel's salvation. Thankfully, we're seeing this right now. And of course, you see what's happening in Israel right now. The church have to choose. Are they going to bring the Messiah to the Jewish people or not? And that's part of what's happening right now in Israel.
Well, I think that the challenge that I would want to present is this view from a Christian standpoint. Many Christians would say, why do I need to go back into the law, or why do I say if Galatians 5:1 says stand fast therefore in the liberty where Christ have made us free,
right?
Why would I be entangled again in that yoke of bondage?
Absolutely, and that's a wonderful question. And first of all, look, both Paul, Peter, and even Yeshua himself, they call themselves bond servants. They call themselves bond servants. Nobody wants to be a servant, right? A slave, but they call it. Sometimes we put ourselves under this servanthood, not for ourselves, but we put ourselves under this servanthood to win those who are truly our slaves. And that's something everybody have to understand. This is greater than the law. Jesus said, one who loves is rather, there's no greater love. There's no greater love than it. Have nothing to do with you. Whether or not you keep the dietary laws or not, have nothing to do, in my humble opinion, in the salvation of a Gentile. Now, the way you treat your brother, the way you love God, the way you love your brother, have everything to do with this. Okay, but here is the question that I would present to every Christian. Do you believe that you're under the new covenant? Yeah. That's a question, right? Here is the problem. The new covenant in Jeremiah chapter 31, it says the following, Jeremiah 31:31. He said, behold, I've given a new covenant to the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. He doesn't say he's given the new covenant to the church. That's what the Bible says. It's straight from the scriptures. So the new covenant is given to Israel. So today, in essence, Jesus came. He died upon the cross. And Paul says he died upon the tree in order for you to become engrafted into Israel. You follow, you're being engrafted into Israel. You have not replaced Israel. The church have not replaced Israel. God forbid. They've been engrafted to Israel because the new covenant is not for the foreigner. It's for the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. So look, you are entering into a new house, okay? And this house have a lot of grace. Let me tell you something. Not the same rules apply for the Gentile and to a Jew in a new house. But shouldn't you at the very least want to have coherence in the house? If you build a house that's called the church, yet Paul says the house is called Israel, we are competing now rather than working together. You follow what I'm saying? And we have two houses. I don't believe that. I believe God come once for all the righteous, Jew and Gentile alike. And he is saving all the remnant among the Jews and among the Gentiles. And we're unique. We have different roles and responsibility of this house. The responsibility of the Gentiles now is to come into a house of Israel and restore the fallen tabernacle of David. The house has been fallen. We have not had a temple for 2,000 years. The only one who can restore the spiritual tabernacle, the real Messiah, the real temple, is the Gentiles. So you don't do those things for the sake of anything that have to do with you. You do them for the sake of Messiah name to be restored to the Jewish people. You follow it? Although your action might seem the same, they are not for the same purpose. You're doing it for Zion salvation, as Paul says, so that all of Israel will be saved.
Now, from a different standpoint, if I shift it a little bit, wouldn't there be an argument that, do you believe, do Jews that are, say, the Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox or whoever is following the law to the letter, doing
Yes.
these things all the time, does not believe that Jesus, or hasn't been taught, doesn't know anything else except Judaism,
Right.
because they've been raised in it and they've been brought up in it.
Right.
So why do they need Jesus, or why do they need Yeshua? Or aren't they still under the old covenant? Or how does that work?
Well, first of all, let me say it clearly. We all need a Mashiach. Everybody need a Messiah, Jew or Gentile alike. Let me start it. Remember number one, that every day, 3 times a day, every Orthodox Jews pray for the Shekinah to return to Zion, because the Shekinah has been departed when the temple has been destroyed. It's every day. We're praying it three times a day, and it's a prayer that's called the standing prayer. So number one, we as Jews already recognize that we need Mashiach. Okay, we do recognize that we need Mashiach. The issue is, can we, every Jew in the world will tell you today, because Judaism have 13 articles of faith. Number 12 says, I believe in a perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah. And even if it delay, I will await his coming every day. Most people stop there. But you know what the next benediction said, the next line, he said, if one does not await his coming and does not believe in coming, does not even believe in Moses. Exactly what Jesus says. If you believe Moses, you believed me. So you have to understand, the core of Judaism is a core in waiting for Mashiach and coming of Mashiach, of the Messiah. We need him desperately. The question is the Jesus, I'm not talking about the historical Jesus, I am talking about the Jesus that is loved and revered in the church today, is the Jesus Jewish people can accept. And I will tell you, no, it cannot be. Because this Jesus is foreign to us. Look at this right now. We are in the midst of the worst Holocaust since 1948. I can tell you on a personal, intimate level that we have reached hundreds of churches. And I told them, very simply, I'm a Jew, believe in Jesus. Will you allow me to speak about this in your church? About what's happening right now in Israel? And many churches, 1 or 2% only, even allowed to open the doors. And they all said, no, we don't let outsiders in. Do you have children?
I do.
Boy or girls?
3 girls.
3 girls. What would have happened to you if one day your daughter will bring a boy and she will say, introduce you to the boy, and he says, I'm madly in love with your daughter. I want to marry your daughter. But then you go around the corner and tell your daughter, I love you with all my heart, but your dad, I can't stand. The wedding will not take place, right? Because it's a package deal. Because when you're marrying somebody, you're marrying their family. I want you to think about this. The church revering Jesus today, but many rejected through a lot of things, theological, historical things, rejecting the family of Jesus. I am the family of Jesus. My family is the family of Jesus. The amount of anti-Semitism we have experienced from Christians even is beyond belief. I don't understand it. So I would say this to you. When the church understands that marrying Jesus is marrying Israel because he's the son of Israel, then we can talk about Jesus returning to the Jewish people.
So is that where you feel like that's where the importance lies in as Christians, somebody who's not raised in
Yes.
Judaism, doesn't know hardly anything about Judaism. As a Christian, we're rejecting Judaism, and so when we're rejecting Judaism, we're kind of rejecting that lineage that Jesus came from and who he is.
It's worse than that. All of us know what the replacement theology is. The theology that state that the church replaced Israel, and many reject it. Okay, many reject it. Praise be to God. But there are still many who accept it through dispensationalism and even like a pre-trib raptures and all of those type of things. We don't have time to get to all of those different. They're all anti-Semitic in the end of the day. But let me stress to you, there is worse, something much worse in terms of replacement. Not replacement of Israel with the church, but replacing Yeshua, the real authentic Yeshua, with a Jesus that we have made in the church to fit us. And to me, that is the greatest sin. Before you go and cry out to the Jewish people, say, I'm sorry. I think every Christian really need to do something now. And I think even what's happening in Israel now is giving us opportunity. I see so many Christians and they cannot even line up. Am I in the Jewish side and I'm in the Palestinian side? Where am I as a Christian? No, Yeshua is the line of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Judah. You follow what we have replaced Jesus with another Jesus. We replaced Yeshua really with another Jesus. So the challenge for everybody now is to really find a way to connect with the scriptures. And I say, start with the Matthew 1:1. Find good teachers, preferably Jewish teachers. Your own pastor here in the church created a program to do that exact thing, to teach pastors how to reconnect from Matthew 1:1 and on for that exact reason, so that you make the connection again between Yeshua and Israel, because they are one in the same.
There's something that you've alluded to a couple of times, and I want to maybe clarify in my mind. Do you believe that you are following a different Jesus than what I'm following?
Look, you're asking some very significant questions. And I don't want to be on your program condemning Christians. It's not productive. It's not fruitful. But if you ask me the question, when I first read the New Testament, and that was again many years ago, what I read and the Jesus that I saw when I went to the churches was very different than the Jesus and the Yeshua I read about. The one that was in the synagogue, the one who ate kosher, the one who kept the Shabbat, the one who quoted Moses again and again. I go sometimes to churches. I take them to the book of Leviticus, and they don't barely know anything about the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. It's like an afterthought. That's the old. You know, even the language, calling it the Old Testament. Jesus says, do not think I came to abolish the Torah or the prophet. I came to fulfill it. Not one jot and not one tittle will pass until the heaven and earth will pass away. Well, heaven and earth still here. We're still standing here. He spoke about the eternality of the Torah. and this power. And I think it's not that we're following necessarily a different Jesus. I think what's happened is when you start getting to the epistles, to like Paul, for example, and so forth, we look at the lens. I always hear by Paul said, by Paul said, by Paul said. No, we need to re-examine Paul, who was a Pharisee, in a new light. I think if we can straighten out the Pauline theology, some of the Pauline theology, we understand why he spoke something like that to the Gentiles, why he told the Gentiles, don't go do a circumcision like the book of Galatians. He said, no, don't do that. But then he wanted to go and circumcise Timothy at the same time. It seems like he's contradictory. So I think that needs to be the entire New Testament, is my conclusion, is very Jewish. All of it is Jewish at the end of the day. So I think, to answer your question, as a result, I'm not trying to cop out of your question, as a result of misunderstanding Paul in so large degree, we ended up building another Jesus in the church that not necessarily resemble the one that the scripture is. But thankfully, there is going to be a remnant of the church that's going to be looking at that. There's a doctor that is studying in our school now. He hold multiple PhDs, and he told me something, and I think this is the most humbling thing. He said, I spent 50 years in academia, and the most humbling thing for me after 50 years and earning 2 doctorate degrees is needing to unlearn the things that I learned for 50 years in seminary. So it's not beyond hope. And I don't want to make it sound like everything in Christianity, everything they taught you is bad. It's not true either, okay? But I think certain things that are foundational have to be re-examined, that we're going to end us up in a very different Yeshua potentially.
Well, this is fascinating stuff. And that's where the questions come from, because like I said, you're getting a lot of questions from ignorance in a standpoint from where I'm coming from. And so when I'm asking a question, and I want to put the disclaimer out there for anybody watching or listening as well, I don't have a vast knowledge of it. And then also I've been raised Christian.
Sure.
And that's where my basis of understanding
Sure.
comes from. So these questions come from that standpoint. This has been a really interesting conversation. And this stuff fascinates me, like I said. And we didn't even get to get into the book.
No, it's okay. Yeah, but it's important for everybody to understand this. We're not here to talk about books and this and that. We're really here to understand something much more fundamental, that God does things in the world. I mean, this new Hamas book is an opportunity. That's why I call it the great organized chaos and the coming of Mashiach. And I do want to say this for Christians. This is the opportunity happening now in my home country, which is tragic, is giving an opportunity for Christians to ask 2 fundamental questions. Number 1, which side Jesus is in? Okay? Which should be very obvious to everybody. He wasn't a Palestinian. He is a son of Israel. It even says in Isaiah 63 that when Israel suffer, he suffered with Israel. He is in the tunnels. He's suffering with Israel right now. So it's giving an opportunity, and then it's give the opportunity for every church right now to do the right thing, is to really line themselves. Let's start out of this chaos and tragedy. The Jewish people need healing. We need healing right now. We are traumatized by Christians. We are traumatized right now. I read a report just this morning that 50% of the Jewish people lost non-Jewish friends since October 7th. Those people who profess and proclaim faith in Christ. So I want to challenge everybody. We talk a lot about this connection to family. We are the family of Jesus. And the family now need you. You are the family by the blood of Jesus. You need to know that you are family to us. It's not that complicated. If we know that you're family from us, then we can have a real talk. Let's talk about Jesus. Okay? But first, before we can preach it to the Jews, I need to know that you're family to me. It's as simple as that. Then we can talk about anything else. And not just by words, by actions.
Right. This is really interesting. You mentioned the what's going on right now, the tragedy that's happening there in Israel. Now, from a standpoint, I spent some time in Iraq in 2006.
Thank you for your service.
No, thanks. So I was there in 2006, and I just remember, even if I go back to 2001 when 9/11 happened here in the States, and then later on, a few months later, we were watching on TV as we bombed Iraq, bombed Baghdad, and things like that, tore down that statue, stuff like that. So when I'm looking at things like that, as now I'm looking at it 20 years later, and I'm like, what was I doing over there? Why was I even there in Iraq? What was I doing?
Yeah.
And it makes, because we get raised in this way of life that we believe that we don't see anything else. We don't see another side to the story sometimes. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because when I think about that and I look back and I say, that was just, like you said, like I might lose listeners over this or something, but that was idiocy. That was stupid, stupidity. The whole thing,
Right.
the whole me being there, the whole outcome of everything there in Iraq, everything that happened. And at the time I was, I didn't know that. And, people getting killed, things like that. Now, the reason I bring this up is because when I look at things going on in the world, I tend to go the route of it's so tough, because we kind of have to believe that war is necessary.
Right.
But it's hard for me to actually believe that war is necessary. And so this whole thing happening, even the retaliation or stuff like that, where do you come down on that?
David Ben-Gurion, when Israel was established as a nation, the very first thing that happened, 5 nations attacked us. And he said, we have to go to war in order to have peace. You have to understand, and this is why I urge everybody, your viewers, to get this book and read it. Our conflict is not with the Palestinian people. The force behind it, the spiritual force. When this came out, I looked at the Bible. Everything, the beheading, the tunnels, the kidnaps, everything been prophesied in the Torah. I put it in front of generals and I showed it to them, even not believing Jews, Israelis, military people, and they were floored. They were floored to see all of this in the Torah. Okay, everything prophesied. Everybody have to understand that we are not fighting against flesh and blood here. And Israel cannot win this war on the physical weapons alone. It's have to have a spiritual intervention here. So when we're talking about war here and this thing, what are we fighting for? You have to understand what we're fighting for. We are fighting for human race. This is a different war. This is a war for humanity. And everybody have to understand that the things that have been done are not new. Okay, they're all prophesied in the Bible. Even the method of killing, the ripping of the babies out of the mother womb, and the chopping of the heads, and all those things, they're all been prophesied as a sign that we're entering into the final battle. So right now, where we're at, there's always a physical picture. But I encourage everybody to not to look at this war through the eyes of the physicality. Understand the spirit behind the war and who is behind it. That's why I wrote this book. It's ultimately going to be a war between the Messiah and Satan himself. And we are just seeing this warming up to this. Anybody think this is going to calm down and quiet down? They don't understand the spiritual forces behind it. So I think for us, we have to understand where we are at right now. It's not even an issue of retaliation. This is a plan by Satan to try to disrupt humanity and destroy humanity.
What would you say to those who say that, the Palestinians they're just trying to get their land back, where they, because they were displaced or whatnot in that time, back in, what was it, 1948 or whatever, when they were kind of like segregated in a sense.
I would say, first of all, learn history. Open the history book from any reputable thing. First of all, if you want to go way back, Islam is a new religion.
Right.
It came around in the seventh century. Who was there? Who was Abraham? Who was Isaac? Who was Jacob? Where David and Solomon? Where was Islam? We cannot be occupier of something that was giving to us if you are a Bible believer. Let's start there.
Given by God.
By God himself. Okay, there was no Islam. Now, specifically in 1948, the British mandate was to divide this land into two parts. The Jordanian side and the Jewish side. This is very, very simple. 48, 56, 67, 73, 82. All wars that started by the other side in trying to annihilate the Jewish people. We have been in defense, and specifically now on Gaza. In 2005, Israel gave all of Gaza to the Palestinians. We're not governing Gaza. We don't decide who is ruling Gaza. They have free election. The people of Gaza have chosen the Hamas, receive hundreds of millions of dollars, by the way, from American administration. Your tax dollars are paying for that to build Gaza. That could have easily been Singapore. And you know who would be the very first to help them? Us, the Israelis. We would be the very first to cheer for them. But instead of training and teaching and building, they decide to build a nation of terror. And when you read the book, you will understand what is really behind this. So I would say for everybody who think that Israel have been out of Gaza for almost 20 years. And that's why we see them having, 50,000 rockets? How much money do you need to have those rockets? Rather than teaching your children not to hate, not that 70 virgins waiting for you in heaven. And that's what we're fighting with. We're not fighting against people. We're fighting against Satan himself. Now,
you mentioned this is the land that God gave to Israel.
Yes.
And then the whole thing when it happened when the Palestinians were displaced from the land, it was originally Israel's land.
It was, before 1948, people should understand, 1800, 1700, 1600, right. There were always Jews in the land. There were always Jewish people here in the land. It's not like we never completely left the land. Everybody have to understand that.
So the thing is, I grew up in northern New Mexico in a 650 acres ranch. Okay. In the middle of nowhere. And so in the mountains, I would, go out and walk around the land through the trees. And I would find arrowheads and pottery from the Native Americans from many, many, many years previous. So I know for a fact that Native Americans were in this land.
Right.
Right? And so this was their land.
Right.
And then I also know for a fact, they got forcibly removed from this land.
Right.
And then eventually it came to be owned by my family, and who now, they still live there. And so the question comes, at what point do we say, if they were to come in and take back the land, if Native Americans were to come in and take back the land from my family,
right.
I would feel justified, fighting back against them to keep that land. And so
at what point you say enough is enough time went by?
Yeah, it's like, how far back do we have to keep going?
I believe that God promises are eternal. We cannot go against God's promises, and you should understand the overwhelming evidence that this is all Jewish in the land. If you ever been in Israel, see the archaeology, and even the amount of stuff the Palestinians trying to destroy. You know how much they found in the debris that they bring those big trolleys for the, to take the dirt, and they try to destroy Jewish evidence. It's incredible. Everything from the time of Joshua, on, the time of King David, and further on, Jews were always there. So if you believe in the Bible, you believe in that. And look, the reality is simple. You are living next to millions of people now that do not see the right for you to be even in existence.
Right.
Everybody need to remember on October 7th, Simchat Torah, 5,000 rockets hit Israel, where 3,000 terrorists came, raped, murdered, massacred. I want to ask you a question. You're in New Mexico, right? It's have a border to Texas.
Yes.
Right? Texas have a border to Mexico. What would happen if Mexico shoot on Houston 5,000 rockets and kidnap people? I would like to know what United States of America would have done to Mexico.
Yeah.
We would wipe them from the face of the earth.
Right.
And they are firing these rockets from inside the hospitals. We are dealing with this. But again, for us as believers, we see those physical horror. But if you see the spiritual, it's magnify everything. And we have to understand the spirit behind all of those things.
And I suppose the challenge comes from, like, in that case, then we would say who's right. Like, but if we remove the Bible, right?
Yeah, even if you remove the Bible,
that's what I want to know. If we remove the Bible,
remove the Bible. Look at the hard facts. Israel give them a chance to self-govern themselves.
Right.
Okay, remove the Bible. One religion believe in the sanctity of life. One religion believe in the sanctity of death. What are you going to choose? You see, in Israel, we don't raise our children to celebrate when even one Palestinian child live. Okay? The terrorists call his mommy and say, hey, I just killed Israeli and a blood on my hand right now. And she said, Allahu Akbar. This is the fundamental difference. And this difference is a difference not just of the Bible, of the God that you serve. My God, your God, is a God of the living, not the God of the dead. That's what the Bible says. So we choose life.
I have one more thing, if that's all right. Why are the Jews always persecuted? It's a serious question. Why is it always?
It's very simple, because it says in the book of John that salvation will come of the Jews. You understand, when the Jews thrive and successful, blessing come to the entire world. A nation of only 10 million people have more Nobel Prizes per capita than any other nation on the face of the earth. Israel was able to be a blessing in so many things: agriculture, technology, health, pioneering. When the Jewish people thrive, light is coming to the world. But Satan doesn't want that. And that's why he is trying to destroy them. The Jewish people thriving mean America is thriving. It means that the world is thriving. And that's why we have to understand right now what it's coming down to. The final showdown, the final battle that is coming. And that's where, kind of coming back to the earlier discussion that we've been having, that's where we need the help of the church now, of Christians. Find out who you are aligned with the God of Israel or with Allah. But make a decision and go all in. Go all in.
No, this has been a fascinating conversation. We do have to wrap it up, but Rabbi Shapira, I do have one question, and you can be as brief as you like.
Okay.
What can you tell for young men who want to follow Christ, want to follow Yeshua better? What would you tell them?
You know, the one thing I will tell them, at least from my experience, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody or anything, but for me, all the odds were against it, against all odds. I am a Jew. I am an observant Jew. I'm from a very strong Jewish family, and I had to find the truth. But when I found the truth, I had to do one thing that's very important. I had to become brave. You cannot follow him and not being brave. So the one thing I will tell everybody, don't worry about anything else. Take the word of Joshua 1 to heart. Be bold, be strong, and when the word of the Torah of the Lord will not depart from your lips, be brave, be courageous, and walk this walk in joy and pride, but truly in conviction. Don't be lukewarm. That's what I say. If you are going to have this conviction, be willing to even give your life for this conviction. And believe me, he will take the narrow path, and he will keep you on this narrow path. Don't compromise.
That's amazing. Don't compromise.
Thank you so
Rabbi
much.
Shapira, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks.
If you made it this way, like, subscribe, buy the new Hamas by Rabbi Dr. Shapira right here. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.